you'll all be requested to confirm you still want to be here. So welcome to, let me share my screen so you all know you're in the right session. Get your values off the wall and into the DNA. So when we interact with a company first, generally one of the first things that we get asked to help them with is maybe define their values, or maybe upgrade or tweak or make them relevant for where they are today. Maybe the company has grown, maybe it's changed or morphed. And that's generally the first thing. But actually, and that can be quite a difficult task, but once you get through that, the real difficult work starts of how do you get the values from that lovely poster that we've made into the DNA of the company, so it's lived and breathed every day. So today we're going to share what I see as the top 5 tips of doing this. I had to work hard to get it down to 5. I wanted to share about 12, but I made myself bring it down to the top 5. So who are we? We're Hello Performance. We're a culture consultancy. We work mainly with companies who have boots on the ground, so hourly workers and salaried workers. We work a lot in manufacturing, in food manufacturing. My background is all food manufacturing, but we have some tech client and events client, construction client as well. So you have different ones, but again, what they all have in common is they have boots on the ground and they have salaried workers, so desk and non-desk based workers. That's generally where our expertise is. So there's always a culture. You end up with one, whatever you do. So you can either choose it to shape it and influence it, or take your chances. So it's something we talk about the garden a lot, is you can choose what kind of garden you have. You can, tweak it, frame it, have the beautiful English garden, or you can have the wild bee-loving garden, depending on what you want to do. But come to a point, you have to make sure that you weed it and take out the ones you don't want as you shape it. But it's your shaping decides the outcome of and not yours specifically, but the company's shaping decides the outcome of that culture. It's one of my favorite quotes, actually. So components of a brilliant culture. So we say there is 3 components of a brilliant culture, and there's commonalities that we see in any company that we see with a really strong, great culture. There's the environment that you're in. Are you feeling it from the environment you're in? There's the mindset. So that's around how you behave, what your approach is. And then we talk about rewarding it, rewarding in line with the values, or rewarding the behaviors that are in line with your values. So we talk a lot about behaviors rather than values, which are there, and we'll talk how they are connected, because that's the core base of an entire culture. So the right environment, the right mindset, and are the right values and behaviors being rewarded. So they're the 3 key components that you start off with to make sure you're aiming for that brilliant culture. So what are values? Let's start off with that to make sure we're all aligned on what values are. They're the foundations of any culture. They're what the company values. It's what you're saying, this is what's important to us. This is what we believe that is important to us and how we want to behave so that our customers feel valued and our employees feel valued. And we say that if you have your culture really embedded in your DNA, the customers should have that great customer experience. So what they come back for more, that's what you're aiming for, so that you have that resale. And the employees, if they have that great experience and that great, the employee experience, they want to stay and they want to have more of that and experience more of that. It's what we are when we're at our best. It's what we are now, but also what we want to be when we evolve. So I love that line. It's what we are when we are at our best, because we're not like that every day, but it's what we're aiming for and what we really want to be. But most important, it's the blueprint for our behaviors. It's the blueprint for the behaviors that we want to see throughout the company. So why is it so hard to embed then when you have defined values, or you have decided what you want them to be, or you want to change or shift that culture within your company? Why is it so hard to embed? Well, it's a set of fundamental beliefs to a broad range of people. People are different. They all behave differently. They all react differently. How do you get a set of beliefs common across a broad range of people? Behavior change, we know, we work in that world with humans. We know to shift behavior or behavior change, just think of something you want to do for yourself. It's so hard to make yourself do it. How do you shift an entire group of people to have a slightly tweaked behavior? When companies start, the founder or the founders generally set the culture. It's normally very related to their personal values. And when the company is small, you're in that world where you have the ripple effect, and you feel the culture very much from the founders. But then as the company grows, you're further from that epicenter that's radiating those values. So, and then as the company gets bigger and even further, how do you ensure that the values are as lived out here as they are in that initial epicenter? So that is generally what you see as companies grow. They suddenly go, wow, it was great for so long, and now we're hiring new people, and their behavior is not consistent with what we were originally had or we want to have. The leaders, this is for me one of the key ones, is getting the leaders to ensure that they have the same behavior, because unless they are living and breathing the values, you can forget from the rest of the company. And getting that can be quite difficult. And values, it can be quite ambiguous, a little bit fluffy, what actually does it mean? So until we bring it down to brass tacks, it can be quite hard to get to be lived. So right, I'm going to get you all to come off mute now and join in with me. So what are the consequences when values are not lived and breathed every day? What have you noticed if you have worked in some environment where this has not happened?
Well, they're disengaged, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kerry, totally. People get disengaged, demotivated.
Yeah, well, they just don't really know why they are there and why they're doing the job role that they're expected to do, and the outcomes for it.
And then the employee engagement goes down, and then we see the impact on productivity, on motivation, on revenue. You see that down the impact down the line. What else?
I think it can be they take on something which isn't true to the company, so you can go off in a different direction. So if you're not referring back to something continually and embedding it every day, the direction in which, the strategy you want to go and achieve, it can come off course and you end up in a completely different direction. And, that's to the detriment of everyone then, because you haven't been, or it could be, it could be beneficial, if said values are actually terrible,
yes,
then you could have like a positive that comes out of it, because actually then the people that are actually doing the work are making it better themselves, and it becomes a different character.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you can definitely end up in a completely different environment to what you set out in the first place. Yeah.
Totally. And it's really about getting those values congruent with what is actually lived in the company, isn't it? So and also that it's going to feed the strategy, that the direction you want to go, that they are aligned on, and feeding that direction. Exactly, Rebecca. Anything else? I also think it brings massive lack of trust. If the values are saying one thing, but actually what happens on a day-to-day is very different, it brings a big lack of trust within a company, and you don't really believe of what it's been said, what they are aiming for, because it's like, well, we say we do all this lovely stuff, but actually on a day-to-day we don't. It can bring massive lack of trust, lack of integrity. Again, back to what Debbie was saying, that lack of motivation, and that lack of engagement. Great. So So what we do is when we work on our culture accelerator, we help companies define their culture, get it written down, and then we help them to embed it and measure it. They're the three things that we help companies do. And as we've gone along, the experiences that we've had, here are the top tips that we have gone through to see how to embed values in a company. So if we think about our three circles: environment, mindset, and reward. Environment, you need to be seeing and hearing the values numerous times a day. You need to be seeing and hearing it every single day. So what do I mean by that? So some examples, I take some examples from companies: having it on the wall, in email signatures, on the newsletter, on the information screens. Screensaver is another lovely one. Mobile phone covers is another gorgeous one I've seen in the values down the back. On the mug. So this is just generally things around you that you're seeing these words every day. It does not embed it, but it will help get those words as part of the language every day. What about hearing it? Now, this is taking it then to the next level. This leadership using it in their daily language. So those words should be coming out in the daily language. The MD, CEO town halls, or if they do information sessions, that they're connecting what they're talking about, like the strategy, back to the values as well, that it needs to be part of that language. When we announce rewards, the employee of the month, for example, that we're connecting that into the value. So again, this hearing, that's all the time, making it live, real, and connected with what the company is talking about. Morning meetings, whatever you're talking about, that it comes out in the morning meetings going, is that connected with what we're doing with our values? Does that feed our values? We used to have, when I was operations, in our factory, we used to do at the end of our weekly meetings going, well, let's rate ourselves. How have we lived our values this morning in this meeting, with the decisions we made? And we give ourselves a rating and be quite tough with ourselves. But again, it made it live. It made us think about it, made us reflect on it. One-to-ones, managers should be bringing it up as part of the discussions on one-to-ones. So that's really bringing it alive into the seeing and hearing it. So moving on then to mindset, translating the values into behaviors. So values is a description. It can be a word, there can be a verb in it, but then it's bringing that down to the facts of what does it mean. So we had one company, they do what we do, what we don't do. We've companies that have just a word description. We have some ones with points, but whatever they turn into, making it into behaviors. So because why would you do that? If you take the word like honesty, or take a word like care, take a word like personal, customer care, customer satisfaction, what that means to different people, they can have different understanding. So what you're trying to do is bring that down to say, this is our understanding, and these are the things that we're going to do. And that's taking away the fluffiness and bringing it down to specifics. And my measure always is, are those behaviors teachable and measurable? Because if you want to connect them into like performance reviews or into that employee circle, you need to be able to measure it in some way. It needs to be actually factual, that you could say, yes, you've done that. No, you have not done that. So it has to be really, really specific. So let me just share what we have here. So these are our values here in Hello, just to show you how we translated a value into the what we do's. So we have, these are our 4 values: personal, impact, rigor, and care. If we just take the last one, for example, so you're not overwhelmed. Let's just take the last one. We described what we mean by care. That was what care means to us. We care about the individuals and companies we work with. We balance the support of individuals as well as the care of the company, so both can thrive. But this is the important stuff. What we do, we treat confidentiality as a given. We treat everyone with positive regard. and we give honest, considered feedback. So this is really specific. I can tell if people are doing it or not doing it. I can tell if I've done it or not done it. It's really, really specific, and that can feed into performance reviews as well. So making it from a description into specific behaviors. That is one of the golden nuggets of helping bring it into the DNA. Third one, recruit in line with your values. So this is helping ensure that you're not recruiting people that are very far from the values that you have, but also that they have a natural sense towards those values. And what we say there is your recruitment company, they should have a deep understanding of your values. So it's not just what are the skills you're looking for, but also what are the types of values that is important in the company. So making sure we are aiming for people that are down that avenue, and making the interviews values based. So what do I actually mean by this? It doesn't have to be very, very complicated. I give an example. Let me just click down. So for example, if you have a value that's honesty, and a related behavior that says we give considered feedback daily, which is a fantastic behavior to have embedded in the company, then I just need to move your lovely faces. An interview question might be, tell me about a time you had to give difficult feedback that was not well received. So really understanding how they approach feedback, see the value of feedback, how they handle when it's been difficult feedback. So that is a really simple way of finding out a little bit more, but connecting the interview questions with the values. Reward. So this for me is a one that makes a massive step change if there is a struggle to get values embedded in a company. It's reward around the values. And what I mean by that is reward. We have things like employee of the month, but also to the next level is actually connecting a bonus with linking values to bonus. And this is where we have seen where there has been a massive resistant to getting the values, or have been a really difficult company to get the values. The minute we did this, we saw a massive step change. In some companies, it's not needed. In other companies, it can help accelerate that living and breathing the values. So I'm going to give you two examples. One where we did it with just the leadership. And why? Because we had a big struggle to get the leadership to buy in and start living the values. And another one where we've done it across the company. So here is where we have done it with the leadership. So the leadership, a measure, they're rewarded based on the feedback for the employees. So each month, this question goes out to the employees as part of a pulse survey. The behavior of our leaders is consistent with the company values, and the people vote whether they agree with this or not agree with this. And based on that, a percentage of the bonus is paid based on that adherence to the values. So in this company, we did the first one we did, they got a 49% of the employees said they agreed with this. 36 were neutral, 15 were unfavorable. But then 1 year later, as the reward was being connected with it, we saw that favorable increase. So leaders had to consciously, and some of them had to make a real effort to live and breathe, and they had to make some big changes in the way they approached their work. And some of them needed even some coaching to actually get there. So this is then the increase. So they are still in using this. They hope to get to a 75 by the next year of a favorable. So that would be voting out of like a 1 to 6. So they got about a 5 or a 6 voting on that. So people really saying that they are living and breathing the values. We have another one where we have done it for just the employees. And their bonus was a 5%, and it was 2% for the overall business, how that was doing. And there was a formula in there how to do that. 2% for your individual objectives, and then 1% of the bonus was adherence to value. So that was your manager reporting on how they saw you adhering to the values. And that was where the behaviors were very clearly and regular in the one-to-ones. They were getting feedback on how they were adhering to the values. So that is, again, a way of ensuring that we're all living as part of it and getting rewarded for it. And more importantly, if you are not, that you're not being rewarded. So there's the second one. And my last one is connected with all of that, is being prepared to fire. And this is a challenging one, is especially if you have if there's an obvious one that is not living and breathing the values and doesn't fit with that company, then it's a kind of a straightforward one. But if they are brilliant, the brilliant jerk is the American term that is used. What about if they're really great at their job? They have a skill that is really needed in the company, but they're not living the values. That is a hard call to make. But the impact that that person can have across the company can be really, really big. So having the confidence and having the evidence as well to be able to make that choice is can be really impactful, because it can be seriously demotivating for people if they see others not living the values when we're all trying to live them here. It literally, what I call it, it's like the water and the pink fluid. You put one drop in, you put another drop in, and it becomes redder and redder, and you can see more and more the impact of these people, that they're really, really poisonous and diluting to the culture. So being prepared to fire, being prepared to make that hard call. So how did that resonate? How did those tips resonate with you guys?
Can I be controversial?
Oh, Richard, I wouldn't expect anything less.
I'm interested in the view, actually, of connecting bonus to values, because to me that seems, and I don't know, it seems to me that you're kind of forcing people, or you're incentivizing them to live values with a financial incentive, and is that right?
Yeah, and there is two ways to look at it. We've used it where it's been a really difficult culture shift. Richard, it's not right for some companies, for sure. I don't know if there's a right or wrong. It works for some companies and would not be a choice for other companies. But it has been one that I've seen a big whoosh, shift and focus, especially where there is leadership who are maybe not fully on board. But yeah, Richard, it can also, do you want to be, linking that to financial value? Ideally, you wouldn't. Maybe initially to fast track, you may. Optional, I would say, Richard.
I have to say, I would agree with Richard. It feels like you're weaponizing them, and I'm not sure that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I love that expression. I'm going to write it down. Weaponizing.
Weaponizing.
I'm not very good at spelling. Weaponizing. Right, I think I've got it right.
I'd say just to add a further layer on it, as opposed to just saying that, because I fully agree that they should be tied to bonus. Like, I definitely think that's right. But if you go kind of a few layers up, like the strategy of the business, if you've got a 3-year strategy, those should actually be aligned to your values. So the behavior is not only an individual, but it's the behavior of the company. So if you have written your strategy around the values as well, and sort of bucketed them in say you've got 5 overarching targets for the next 3 years, and they actually align with your values as well, it doesn't actually feel so much as an employee responsibility. It's the business's responsibility, and it's the employees that are bringing that to life. And so it's actually natural that they would achieve those values. And then as you get further away from the nucleus, as you said earlier, that's then the manager's discretion, and that's the empowerment that the manager has to say, like, are you living and breathing them? So I definitely think if you reverse and go a couple of layers higher, if you get them embedded within the strategy, it's actually a no-brainer, because it doesn't feel so much like you're weaponizing. It's just, this is how we do business. Yeah.
Yeah, what you have to understand, I fundamentally, philosophically don't believe in bonuses. Just declare my colours.
I'm not. I definitely think. I think it'd be better to pay people higher salaries than live in a bonus culture. I'm of that camp, to be honest, because I think bonuses make people get to the, oh, I'll just do half and then I'll stick around for the rest kind of thing. And it can be very dangerous, but I would much rather pay people the salaries or the bonus within the salary if they're worth it, because they'll do it all the time then. Yeah.
Well, we talk about not doing the yearly, doing very regular ones, because
yeah,
then
that's cool.
connecting it with the strategy and the goals, if that is what you are doing. And what about firing?
Love it.
Yeah, I mean, my example of that, I used to work at Virgin, and there was a sales guy at Virgin who was the top performer. And this is back in my young, naive days of being, I think my job title was HR something or other. And the directors wanted my help to get rid of this guy. And I found it very difficult to understand why, because he was the top salesperson. And the guy literally just turned around, the director, and said, because he's a complete arse. And that was a real learning for me, that actually, its culture is far more important than anything else. And he was such a disruptive element. I suppose the only other thing to say on that from my traditional HR background is, if you're firing people in terms of values and their behaviors, that is so subjective, and you really do need to make sure you're following your process.
Exactly.
Because you're going to end up in a lot of hot water.
And that's why we say, with having those behaviors really defined, being teachable and measurable is a key to that, because otherwise it turns into a really ambiguous, arbitrary type discussion. So that is the key, those really measurable ones. And if you have it regularly in your one-to-ones and your performance, it makes that final part easier. But you're right, Richard, it has to be really, really, really specific.
Of course, and it is very subjective, isn't it? I mean, I remember we used to have the value of fun at Virgin, which that's a nightmare for HR people. Just having that value, because it's like, that was their excuse. I remember we had 2 call center people they were cutting callers off. And of course that's a complete no-no. And their defense was, well, we're just having fun. It's one of our values. It's like, right, okay.
There's an interesting HBR Harvard Business Review research. Like, my background's finance, and I'm always going to go, how much money does culture generate for a good business kind of thing? And they analysed like what good cultures did for revenue and what bad cultures, or it was actually more individuals. So when you have a very positive, engaged individual, they earn on average, not in sales, this is indirect, they'll earn the company on average $5,000 extra because of their positivity and their interactions and their like camaraderie that they're building between each other. But then when you have a toxic employee, they actually cost the business $12,000 because they drag people down. And then your example there is like cutting off calls. I mean, that's sales gone. Like it's absolutely wild. So when you put it in financial terms, I think it's just a no-brainer. It's like, well, this person costs us too much money. Yeah.
And there's the time element as well, isn't there? You think, I look back on my HR career, the amount of time I've spent trying to sort out disengaged people. It's just, yeah,
the efforts. Good. Right. Any other questions?
What's the when you start these projects with businesses, does there tend to be a very similar resistance, a similar like vein of resistance that you get, or it's very, very broad, like why? Okay, wow.
Yeah. So so when we start, so that is normally in the second stage. So first of all, you're defining the values. Say, well, actually, let me just, great. Oh, Rebecca, did I like prime you to lead us into the next part? And then I can, and then I can actually answer your question as well. Let me just make sure I can move your lovely faces. So we have a 5-stage process that we go through. When we do engage with companies, we decode what we call decode their culture, pinpointing what it is and those values so they can be really teachable and measurable and used in performance reviews. Then we go in and do a deep dive, which is like an engagement survey, and really measure where their culture is at. And that's done through in surveys, but also through interviews. Then devising a plan to tackle the top areas, the top 3 selected areas. And that they're those top tips that came out of some of those areas that we would have selected. And then we help deliver them, and we help hold the company accountable, because normally what happens is the enthusiasm goes down after a while. So having those sessions and bringing in that ideas from the other companies, we do that through the delivery phase, through to then you're delighting your clients and your employees. So when you talk about the resistance, Rebecca, you can have a lot of, I would say 3 different types. You can have resistance from the beginning, defining the values. What's the value of this? Why are we doing it? Through to measuring, oh, do we have to do these surveys? They're a waste of time. Through, that would be the most resistant. Or the in-between ones are the ones where they're all about the values, all about measuring. So they've done the surveys, but then don't have the longevity to actually implement and fix the issues. So every year there's the, let's do the survey again. Where we really promote doing regular pulses rather than doing this big survey once a year. So it's the second kind of level of resistance. So the enthusiasm at the beginning, but then not really on for doing the real hard yards of implementing it. And the third ones that are just the promoters and want to make their culture great and brilliant. I mean, obviously very easy to work with them because they're very positive throughout. So you have all the leadership. It's about getting the leadership on board is one of the key parts of the program, because that makes everything so much easier flow down. So that answer your question, Rebecca?
Yeah.
So if this resonated with you guys and it's something that you would like to have a little further discussion about how we work and what's involved, I'll just share my screen with you. And we do a Calendly link out to everyone after so that they can book a time that works with them. Just share my entire desktop so you can see. If anyone hasn't seen a Calendly link before, here we go. This is what it would look like. You click on the link, you get some options of the different times, and then you can choose a time that works for you. You book it, it sets up a Zoom call for us, and we can have a half an hour to think about what is the strategy for you going on to your next step on where you are with culture and embedding those values. Or if you have questions or challenges, we can go through those. So I would recommend booking for half an hour. We can talk about the strategy for you and your company, and that would be really, really great. Super duper. Where are we? Let's go back. So yeah, so that's the Calendly. So right, let's think. Let's go around. What's the one thing you guys are going to commit to embed the values further in your company? Anyone want to share any?
I'm currently relaunching our employee forum. So within the next couple of weeks, doing a whole reballoting process to drive that engagement. And obviously that will then drive the values, drive the values and then drive the engagement. So we're sort of at a bottom peak at the moment, and hopefully that will steadily increase. So I've certainly got a challenge on my hands. But we've had an influx of new starters that I don't really think throughout the whole induction and recruitment process necessarily get to understand the company's values. So again, that'll be
that induction one. That's another.
change.
Yeah, that's a great one, Kerry. The induction one, because that was one of the next tips, is getting that induction nailed so that people are like absorbed and excited and really embedded from that beginning is key. Oh, Kerry, that's a fantastic one. Anything else want to share what they're doing to embed their values?
I'm going to just have a sit and think about where we can do it. I mean, we're extremely hot on them. Like where I work in Moju, it's values are everything. We've, built, it's a small business. We have both co-founders very present. So when you have that, it's extremely good because they're very much referring to them and breathing them. They're very much on board. But I think as the company grows, it's that danger zone of making sure that So the key for me is like, we have our induction process, all the way through the EVP. You make sure that values are coming up all the time. So it's how can we make sure that our managers are reinforcing them all the time? It's not just coming from the senior leadership, it's coming from those lower down, and then you have that self-enforcing part of it. But we've already got things like monthly awards and nominations for living and breathing the values. We have them tied to our strategy. We have them tied to our quarterly performance reviews, like reflection. So there's a lot there. So I'm kind of like just zooming out really and saying, what is there any further way we can do it, or is it just in our presentations, in our documentation, making sure that it's very present in that?
Seeing and hearing,
I liked what you said about like email signatures and things like that, just to make sure that in both internally and externally, it's very, very present.
Very live and subconsciously absorbed every day as well. Great. Anyone else want to share? Oh, quiet. Good. Well, then I'll leave you off. I'll share with you the Calendly link after. Thank you so much for joining, guys, and being so interactive. You're fantastic. And anyone who was joining last week who had issues with the link, big apologies again. That's why we put it on the second time. So big apologies, and delighted you could join today. And hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.